Hi, I'm Hamzan Imran, and in this video series I'm going to teach you the Python. Remember, this is going to be a very absolute beginner's course, so it's going to be a Python introduction with hands-on for those who have no experience with Python. Well, I will be expecting that you do have some programming experience in any other language, let's say C++ or Basic or etc. But that is also a very light expectation, so I do not expect you to be a hardcore programmer at all. So let's move towards the course content which I have enlisted and which I'm going to explain in this video. Let's talk about it briefly. So when you will be completing the course, there's going to be some programming tasks that I will provide you, and along with those I will also provide the solution. So it would be upon you to first try yourself, and then you can also concern the solutions. Well, that's going to be the last thing. Talking about the first thing that will be discussed in this course, that's going to be the comparison between compiled and interpreted languages. So you will be told what is the difference between a compiled language, let's say C++, and an interpreted language, which Python itself is. Then you will be told how to declare variables in Python, and then you will be explained how to perform some basic arithmetic operations in Python. Then we will move towards conditional statements, that includes if, else, switch, etc. And programming examples will be there. Then we will talk about iterators or loops. So the good thing about Python is the coding is pretty easy and straightforward. So comparing Python with C++, let's say, the loops are very easy to implement, and they facilitate you in various scenarios. So we will be talking about loops that includes for, while, and etc. Then we will be talking about file handling, which will include extracting data from the files and then dumping output to the files. Then there will be a brief introduction to some famous data structures that includes arrays, lists. By the way, there's no array in Python. There's list. So we'll be talking about list, we'll be talking about sets, we will be talking about linked list, etc. By the way, data structure is an entire topic in itself, but we will be covering it very briefly. We will not going to implement anything by ourselves, like let's say linked lists or stacks, but in this course we are going to use some data structures which are already there, like dictionaries, sets, lists, etc. And there will be a brief introduction to what are actually data structures. Then we will be talking about functions. So what happens in programming is that you divide your code into chunks, and those chunks does some certain task. Let's say we call them functions. Let's say there is a function of sum, so you give it two numbers and it returns you the sum of them. So this is like a whole functionality in itself, which is separated. So the benefit of such creating such functions or such strategy or such programming is that your code is reusable. So we are going to discuss that in detail. Then we will be talking about exception handling. So there are some scenarios where exception occurs. Let's say you try to access some file and that file is not present on the system on the location where you pointed it to be found. Then what your code should do, instead of crashing or instead of producing strange errors, it's a good practice to make your code terminate in certain fashion. That will be covered. That comes under exception handling. And then we will be talking about classes very briefly, the syntax of classes, what they are, why there's a need of them, etc. Lastly, we will be talking about how to import and make use of few famous modules of Python. So what are modules? So basically they're like already written collection of code which you can make use in your Python code. Let's say, and they are called modules. Let's say there's a module of OS, operating system. So you can making use of that OS module you can perform a lot of operations that are related to the systems. Let's say knowing that certain file exists somewhere or not, let's say copying some file from one directory and putting into another directory, etc. Similarly, for performing operations and handling CSV files, there's a module called pandas, etc. We will be talking about a few famous of them. So this is pretty much for this video. Let's meet in the next video, where we will be talking about the difference between compiled and interpreted language. Thank you very much for watching, and please hit the like button, and I would be thankful if you will subscribe.